Did you guys know that in 2011, writer Will Beall was writing a Justice League movie? If you don't know who Will Beall is, he hasn't done too many things, but he's done things that certainly stick out. He was the writer for Gangster Squad, which starred Ryan Gosling, Josh Brolin, and many others. He also got credits for making the story or the screenplay for the Aquaman film. He's also been credited for Zack Snyder's Justice League as well. His Justice League story is another Justice League mortal from George Miller, except with hardly any drama to it the way George Miller's had. With George Miller, the story was done, everybody was hired, including every single actor for every role. The suits and the costumes were made. Literally the only thing that needed to be done was to film the movie. With Will Beall's, it wasn't that complicated, but there is still a history behind it, even if it may be smaller. In 2011, he began to pen the Justice League film, and in 2013, Ben Affleck was actually attached to the project to be the director for the film. In 2013 as well, Will Beall signed a multi-year contract with Warner Brothers, which probably meant there was going to be more than one Justice League, at the very least 3. But we all know the history. Zack Snyder came in and made Man of Steel in 2011, which dropped in 2013. He went on to make Batman vs. Superman, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and Warner Brothers has been a complete hot mess throughout that entire thing and still is today. But what were the details of Will Beall's story? Imagine another Batman in a Justice League film being directed by Ben Affleck. How would this all have played out? Now, if you go online and simply type in Will Beall Justice League script, I'm sure you can find all 128 pages, because that's how long I believe it actually is. I'm not going to go through the entire script here with you. That would be another video I would want to make. I would maybe even want to make that into almost like a table read for you guys and put a lot of detail into it. So I'm not going to do that. We're just going to go through the story beats and see how it would have looked. And we know that Chris Terrio came in and took over for the story in Batman vs. Superman and forward, but I do wonder if there is any influence from Will Beall's script, which is why he is somewhat credited for Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, a lot of this plot information is coming from the Batman Wikipedia page. Though Steppenwolf is the lead in this year's Justice League, so this was probably written around 2017 or maybe 2021, Beall's draft would have made his boss Darkseid the master of evil. An opening Shark Tank battle ends with Desaad, one of Darkseid's minions, killing Killer Croc and stealing kryptonite that Luthor has just tried to buy from KG Beast, aka Anatoly Knyazov. So maybe there's influence there, the fact that Darkseid is the main villain, but in all honesty, who wouldn't want Darkseid as an overarching villain for your DC universe or your Justice League? So how much inspiration is actually taken from that and not inspiration from DC Comics as a whole? And even the fact that Anatoly Knyazov was playing a role in this movie right off to begin, because Anatoly played a big role in Batman vs. Superman to acquire kryptonite for Lex Luthor. So there's a connection there. While 2016's Batman vs. Superman would pit the heroes against each other, the 2011 script imagined them as allies who know each other's identities and have coffee at Metropolis Diner, where they chat about other DC superheroes like Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and Aquaman. They soon travel to Central City to recruit Barry Allen, the Flash. So clearly, this universe is already established. And I don't know if Will Beall's Justice League script was following up Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. I have no idea if Henry Cavill was the Superman for this project or if it was just an entirely different project on its own. I actually prefer the route of Batman vs Superman rather than starting right here. A lot of people complain we didn't get origin stories or we didn't get proper beginnings for characters before we jumped into Justice League from Batman vs Superman. And whereas I don't necessarily think you need origin stories for every single character part of the league, I do think you need a solid beginning before jumping right into a Justice League film. The fact that we would be watching a live action Justice League film out of nowhere with no connection from the past, a Batman and a Superman who already know each other and already know other heroes, I do honestly think the least you need to do is make a Superman movie and make a Batman movie, and then maybe make a third film with another character or both Batman and Superman together, which then leads into Justice League. Amanda Waller and King Faraday run the Department of Metahuman Affairs and seize Killer Croc's body. We also meet Abel Tarrant, which is Tattooed Man, Copperhead, Barbara Minerva, Cheetah, and Solomon Grundy. Waller and Croc eventually meet in 2016's Suicide Squad. Yeah, they meet, but barely. Who even remembers that? And I don't even remember if they have lines with one another. In Deep Space, Green Lantern, Jon Stewart, and Thanagarian Qatar Hall, aka Hawkman, engage in a cool action sequence inside a space station nightclub as they try to stop Kanjar Ro from helping Desaad weaponize the kryptonite. The first act ends with Superman kidnapped by Steppenwolf and the Parademons and taken back to Apokolips. That is pretty cool. The whole idea would be to have Darkseid take Superman for himself, brainwash him, make him fight for him. But we saw what Zack Snyder did with Superman against Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf stood no chance against him in Zack Snyder's Justice League. So Steppenwolf must be a little more powerful in this world if he's kidnapping Superman. By the start of the second act, Batman goes to Themyscira to recruit Diana, with whom he has a romantic history. Another really interesting detail, the fact that Batman and Wonder Woman have already been a thing in some capacity. Snyder hinted to some of that in his cut of the Justice League, but of course it was never really dived into further because he never had the opportunity to do so. I am a huge fan of Batman and Wonder Woman together. I think it is a must-have couple, no matter what medium we're talking about. But the fact that they're already jumping into a universe where they already have had a fling makes me now question what's the relationship between Batman and these other heroes, because clearly this is all pre-established. Same thing goes with Superman. Barry Allen, Green Lantern, Jon Stewart, and Diana have a meeting with Wayne inside the Batcave, which has several generations of Batmobiles and Batsuits, as well as Mr. Freeze's Cairo gun, the Scarecrow's mask, and the Penguin's umbrella. So that's pretty cool with the Batcave. He was clearly going for a route where it was very comic booky or very Batman animated universe. Batman keeps his memorabilia and decorates his cave with it. He's a tinkerer as well. He has so much equipment, multiple Batmobiles. I really like that style of Batcave. It just shows you how constantly busy Bruce Wayne is being Batman. Jon Stewart returns to Oa and finds the dead bodies of his fellow Lanterns, Katma Tui, Kilowog, Guy Gardner, Salak, and Tomar Ray. The entire Lantern Corps has been massacred by Darkseid. That's pretty cool and actually really devastating. That is an idea I have always had for my own vision of a DC cinematic universe. Eventually, you would hit a point where Darkseid does decimate the Green Lantern Corps. I'm not saying they would all die, but a massive percentage of Green Lanterns would be killed by Darkseid. So it's very cool that he had that idea. But once again, in a pre-established universe, you are killing some pretty heavy hitters. Katma Tui, which is supposed to be his love interest, Kilowog, the best friend of both Hal and John, Guy Gardner, another human lantern, and maybe with the fact that Katma Tui dying is a sign that John Stewart's Green Lantern would eventually end up with Hawkgirl and not Katma, setting up that Justice League animated universe relationship. With the Lantern Corps out of the way, Darkseid invades Earth at the midpoint of the script, with help from a brainwashed Superman. As he does in Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns and Batman vs. Superman, Wayne dons special armor to fight the Man of Steel. Diana manages to release Superman from Dassad's mind control, and Superman rejoins the League in the fight against Darkseid. So maybe there is inspiration there that Snyder and Terrio were using to have Superman go evil to Darkseid. But if you ask me, this is not long enough. If you are willing to explore the story in which Superman goes evil and joins Darkseid, it's got to be an entire movie. It has to be an entire arc, which is what Zack Snyder was doing. Having him turn evil in the first 15 minutes and then 20 minutes later maybe he's unbrainwashed, that's not nearly enough time to explore the consequences of that situation and the type of outcomes that other characters have with the revelation of Superman turning evil. But once again, the idea of Superman going evil, and that's why Batman has to don special armor, whereas with Zack Snyder's world, it was premonitions of a possible future where Superman could go evil, and the story is supposed to progressively get to that point, to that irreversible, or what seems to be irreversible moment where Superman is lost forever. I like what Beall was going with here, but it did need to be fine-tuned, and that is a story that needs to last a while, not a half an hour. Superman goes through a boom tube and travels 11 years into the future to find that Darkseid has wiped out 80% of the Earth's population. Diana leads the last of the human resistance with an aged and gray-haired Bruce Wayne as her second in command. They have a son named Clark Wayne, and one surprising member of the resistance is Lex Luthor. Very nice, a little appreciation for their love for their friend Superman, calling their son Clark. This does feel very nightmarish. This does feel like it may have influenced Zack Snyder, unless there is a very strange coincidence where Zack Snyder has had this idea before Will Beall. I don't know, but that feels like influence to me, and it's good influence because I've always thought the Nightmare World was a really cool idea. And of course Lex would be part of this group. If you're ever in an apocalyptic timeline, Lex Luthor is the type of man to always put his differences aside and join a resistance for the betterment of the human race. The future Batman leads a dozen fighters known as Batman's Berserkers. They include Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, George Harkness, Captain Boomerang, Helena Bertinelli, Huntress, and Barbara Minerva, Cheetah. The last of the Resistance is headquartered inside Superman's Fortress of Solitude. So you have some mercenaries, some Suicide Squad members, some Batman family members. That's pretty neat. The fact that Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, is part of this team, once again, giving me some strong Nightmare vibes, especially at the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League, when we see Deathstroke teamed up with Batman Batman, I'm sure some of these ideas were taken from his script. Future Lex Luthor figures out a way to send Barry Allen back 11 years in time, partly using Darkseid's boom tube. Future Flash goes back in time to before Darkseid's invasion and dies in his younger self's arms after warning of the terrible future. Literally sounds like Batman vs Superman and the Nightmare World, how they're trying to send Flash back in time, except instead to himself, he's going to Bruce Wayne. Diana, Bruce, Barry, and Green Lantern travel to Apokolips and rescue Superman before Desaad can take over his mind, and the reunited Justice League battle Darkseid and his forces on Apokolips to stop the invasion of Earth. The entire Lantern Corps, along with the Amazons from Themyscira, join in the battle. That sounds how it was supposed to be in the final Justice League film from Zack Snyder. This massive battle and event of all kingdoms and households coming together to stop Darkseid. Once again, this story, at least in my opinion, cannot be told in one movie. Something like this needs years to really build up that tension and that spectacle and the amazement of what this involves. I would need to build a story like this up for a while. This has to be done in multiple movies, not one movie. The script ends with Mercy Graves planning a presidential campaign for Lex Luthor and Luthor receiving a message from future Luthor telling him of Superman's secret identity, Clark Kent. So it looks like the next film, or maybe another Superman film that would sequelize from the end of this Justice League, was going to be about President Luthor, which, by the way, fantastic comic book, really good story. And I like that because I do believe that is a story that absolutely needs to be shown in film. Overall, I think Will Beall had something here. I think this script is actually really cool, really interesting. I've seen a lot of leaked superhero scripts, whether they be solo movies or big event Justice League type movies, that honestly are really cringy. And based off of the plot details for this, it doesn't feel that way. It actually feels like this could have been really neat. And a lot of the influence that Snyder took from Will Beall's scripts is the exact ideas I would have wanted him to take. The futuristic apocalyptic nightmare world, the fight against Darkseid, all that stuff I really love. Would have loved to see it continued in the future. My only thing is that whereas this script can work, I do think it needed to be heavily revised, because this needs to have been a story that was going to be strung out over multiple years. It can't and honestly shouldn't be done in one movie. But even though this exact movie didn't come to play out, even though things did not work out for Will Beall, 2 thumbs up for creating an interesting story and also getting some of your ideas still told in some capacity in future movies from Zack Snyder. But now, guys, it is your turn. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of Will Beall's script and his story. Let me know some of the things you would have liked to see, and let me know some of the things maybe you didn't like. Also, let me know if you agree with me, if this is a story that could have been told in one movie, or if it needed multiple years to build. But that is all I have for you on this video, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed it. So until next time, I will talk to you all very soon.